Tonight, we drift softly through the world of medieval beauty, where what was beautiful might surprise and soothe you more than you expect. You step lightly into a medieval dawn, the air thick with mist and the scent of wood smoke curling from humble hearths. The village stirs around you, shuffled footsteps on cobblestones, the low murmur of voices softened by the early chill. You probably won't make it through this day without feeling a little out of place. Imagine trying to fit modern beauty ideals into this world of rough wool, pale faces powdered with chalk, and hair so tightly plucked it almost hurts just to look at it. But before you get too comfortable judging, remember, this is a world where beauty was survival, status, and a kind of power, wrapped in layers of dirt, fashion, and ritual that might seem downright brutal. You hear the creak of wooden shutters opening, see the faint flicker of candlelight through the cracked windows, and feel the coarse fabric of your cloak brushing against your skin. It's a world where a high forehead speaks louder than any tweet, and where a lady's pale face is less about vanity and more about weathering a life mostly indoors, if she's lucky. You sip the thick, bitter ale, and wonder about the strange rituals of beauty, like the dangerous use of lead makeup or the painstaking bleaching of hair with lye. Before we wander deeper, if you like this gentle journey through dusty, forgotten lives, consider liking and subscribing. Share your location and local time below. I love knowing who's joining me in this quiet exploration. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey and unwrap the threads of what medieval beauty really meant, beyond the paint and powdered faces, into the lives of those who lived and breathed it. You remember the rough stone street you walked past earlier? It's back, dust swirling softly, carrying whispers of the women who shaped an era with beauty that was impossible to ignore. The major fact here: during the Middle Ages, a pale complexion was prized, often signifying wealth and a life sheltered from outdoor labor. And the weird cultural tidbit: some women plucked their hairlines aggressively to create an artificially high forehead, a trend that was painful and fraught with risk. Historians still debate whether these beauty practices were purely aesthetic or tied more deeply to social control and status. As the morning sun climbs higher, you find yourself inside a bustling manor house, where the elite tread softly on woven tapestries, and servants hurry past with trays of scented waters and perfumed powders. The contrast between the village and these halls is stark. The beauty here is more elaborate, more performative, but no less taxing. You watch a noblewoman carefully tend to her elaborate coiffure, each braid and curl set with pins, scented oils, and ribbons dyed with rare pigments. She moves slowly, deliberately, aware that her appearance is a currency almost as valuable as the gold in her coffers. The faint crackle of a fire and the soft rustle of silk punctuate the quiet tension of preparation. You feel the cool brush of fine linens against your fingers and catch the faint floral notes of rose water as you observe the meticulous ritual of self-adornment. It's a world where beauty is not just seen but performed, a daily ceremony demanding time, pain, and the unwavering attention of those who depend on appearances to secure their future. Among the ornate gestures, a curious detail emerges. Henna was sometimes used not just for decoration but as a mark of fertility or good luck, showing how beauty and superstition danced hand in hand. You might wonder how much these rituals offered women a sense of power or simply a chain disguised as adornment. Remember the powdered faces and high foreheads from before? They've only grown more elaborate, layered with symbolic meaning and social expectation. Major fact: medieval beauty standards often required women to undergo painful, sometimes dangerous, treatments to achieve the ideal appearance. Weird tidbit: some women applied a mixture of arsenic and vinegar to whiten their skin, a practice as deadly as it was fashionable. Scholars still debate whether such extreme beauty practices were embraced willingly or forced by societal pressures. You follow the muted footsteps down a dim, narrow hallway lined with flickering sconces casting dancing shadows on ancient stone. The air here smells faintly of herbs and beeswax, mingling with the sharp tang of metal from the blacksmith's forge nearby. You probably won't last long standing still in this place. It's a world where appearance and reality blur beneath layers of paint, cloth, and whispered gossip. Through a window, you catch a glimpse of a young noblewoman staring into a polished bronze mirror, tracing the delicate lines of her face. Her skin, unervingly pale, contrasts with the rich hues of her velvet gown. Her fingers tremble as she smooths a patch of rouge onto her cheeks, the color a fleeting mask hiding the long hours spent fasting and the heavy burden of expectation. You hear the faint murmur of ladies-in-waiting discussing the latest fashion. Slim waists squeezed into tight corsets, though not quite the ones you might imagine. Corsetry was just beginning to creep into Europe. It's an era where every inch of flesh concealed or displayed sends a message, and where beauty could be both weapon and prison. You feel the rough texture of embroidery beneath your fingertips and the delicate weight of pearls sewn onto a headdress. Somewhere in the distance, a lute strums softly, a soundtrack to a world obsessed with appearances. Major historical fact: the medieval ideal of beauty was closely tied to notions of virtue and morality, often linking physical purity to spiritual purity. Weird cultural tidbit: some noblewomen used a concoction made from crushed pearls mixed with vinegar as a face wash, believed to improve complexion. Historians still debate whether these beauty rituals genuinely enhanced women's lives or simply reinforced restrictive gender roles. You wander now into the bustling marketplace at the village center, where the scent of fresh bread mingles with the sharp tang of livestock. The sun beats down on uneven cobblestones, and the chatter of merchants negotiating prices is punctuated by the occasional clang of a blacksmith's hammer. It's a far cry from the polished halls you just left behind, but beauty here is no less significant, though defined by different rules entirely. You see women wrapped in homespun wool, faces flushed from the cold and hard work, but still mindful of their appearance. A mother braids her daughter's tangled hair with surprising care, twisting it with bits of colored thread to brighten the dull winter light. Nearby, a group of children chase a stray chicken, their laughter a light, fleeting melody amidst the market's bustle. You touch the rough bark of a cart filled with herbs and spices, the subtle fragrances weaving through the air like ancient secrets. The peasant's beauty was practical. Clear skin meant health, sturdy hands meant hard work, and a bright smile meant a kind heart. Yet, even here superstitions took root. A pinch of salt on a windowsill to ward off the evil eye, or a necklace of garlic to keep witches at bay. You recall the powdered faces and velvet gowns of the noble women. Beauty is everywhere, but its language changes with the soil beneath your feet. Major fact: peasant women often relied on natural remedies like herbs and animal fats to care for their skin and hair. Obscure tidbit: in some regions, women wore tiny bells sewn into their clothing to ward off evil spirits during sleep. Historians still debate how much peasant beauty rituals varied regionally or were influenced by noble trends. You wake sort of as the wind picks up along a muddy road outside a town with no name, at least not one that history bothered to remember. It's the kind of town that disappears into the fog if you blink too long. You walk past crooked wooden houses, their thatched roofs glistening with morning dew, their chimneys coughing out lazy ribbons of smoke. And there she is, half hidden in the mist, a woman hunched over a bucket, scrubbing clothes with red, raw hands. Her dress is patched in 5 places, and her hair is plaited tightly to keep the lice from taking up residence. She glances at you, just once, with eyes that say, "This isn't about glamour. This is survival in wool skirts." Still, she's wearing a brooch. Simple, handmade, likely bone. A gift, maybe, or a charm. Beauty here isn't in the mirror, it's in the effort. In the way she takes a moment to brush a strand of hair from her cheek. In the way she straightens her back when she sees someone watching. You hear chickens clucking, a dog barking, and a child sobbing somewhere in the background, probably over something very dramatic and very muddy. The smell of damp straw and boiled cabbage settles into your cloak. You walk on. You spot another figure, this one younger, maybe 14, rubbing her teeth with a cloth soaked in ashes and vinegar. Not pleasant, but medieval dental routines rarely were. White teeth meant youth. Youth meant marriage. And marriage meant maybe, just maybe, you'd live past 30. Major historical fact: in many parts of medieval Europe, marriageable age for girls started around 12, often arranged based on family alliances rather than affection. Obscure cultural tidbit: some rural communities used the juice of crushed leeks as a kind of primitive skin tonic, though the results were pungent. Historians still debate how much of medieval peasant hygiene was cultural habit and how much was sheer necessity. The wind is louder now, and the hills stretch wide around you. You're walking alongside a noble hunting party. Though you're not here for the sport, you're here for the spectacle. Fur-lined cloaks, jeweled daggers, elaborately coiffed hair under velvet hoods. And not a single person actually dressed for the outdoors. A noble woman rides side-saddle past you. Her hands are hidden in a muff, and her cheeks are rosy with cold and rouge. Her hairline is shaved several inches back to create that high, ethereal forehead fashionable in court circles. A servant discreetly offers her a tiny silver mirror. She checks it without shame. In this world, beauty is armor, and mirrors are weapons. They pause for a meal in the woods. You sit nearby, watching as roast partridge is served on trenchers and wine is poured into horn cups. Between bites, the women gossip. Someone's cousin had a child, and it was born with crooked legs. a bad omen, probably the result of a poorly timed glance at the moon. You notice the talismans stitched into their undergarments, protective symbols meant to shield the wearer from curses, misfortune, or blemishes. Beauty rituals weren't just aesthetic. They were also spiritual. One woman plucks her eyebrows with a small bone tweezer, wincing with each pull. A servant nearby holds a perfumed cloth over her mouth. The scent is rosewater, maybe lavender. It doesn't quite cover the underlying smell of horse and damp wool. Major historical fact: medieval noblewomen frequently used herbal concoctions, such as rosewater, vinegar, and alum, to cleanse their skin and mask odors. Obscure tidbit: some elite women carried pomanders, tiny decorative orbs filled with fragrant herbs, tied to their belts to ward off both foul smells and evil spirits. Historians still debate how much agency noblewomen had over their beauty choices versus pressures imposed by their social standing. You find yourself beneath the creaking beams of a convent scriptorium, where the air smells of beeswax, cold ink, and old parchment. Nuns shuffle quietly between their stations, their faces framed by linen wimples, brows serene, eyes tired. In this quiet corner of the world, beauty isn't about the body, it's about the spirit. Or at least it's supposed to be. But one novice, you see her now, has taken unusual care with the stitching on her scapular. Delicate patterns of thread wind through the hem. Not flashy, but not invisible either. She smoothed her eyebrows with a dab of goose fat and tied her belt just so. You can't help but wonder who she's trying to impress in a building where the only male visitors are saints in illuminated margins. A candle flickers beside a half-finished psalter. Gold leaf glints faintly. Her fingers trace the curling vine work of a capital letter, and for a moment she smiles. Not for anyone else, just herself. Sometimes, beauty is a silent rebellion. Outside, another nun tends to the herb garden in the icy light of late afternoon. She's bundled in layers, face red from the wind, but her hands are gentle as she pinches sprigs of rosemary. For memory, she mutters, and maybe in some small way for perfume. Major historical fact: many medieval convents maintained herb gardens and taught women not just literacy but rudimentary medicine and cosmetics through herb lore. Obscure tidbit: nuns in some orders used a concoction of ground eggshell and vinegar to scrub ink stains from their fingers and occasionally their skin. Historians still debate whether minor acts of self-decoration by nuns were tolerated as harmless vanity or punished as spiritual distraction. The sky is deepening now, velvety and violet, and you find yourself walking through the narrow alleys of a bustling medieval town. Shop signs creak overhead, and smoke curls out of windows like gossip escaping the walls. You pass a weaver's daughter leaning against a doorway. She's wearing her best kirtle. It's been mended so many times the fabric has stories of its own. She's dabbing something onto her lips, beet juice, maybe, or the crushed skin of elderberries. Her friend laughs softly and holds up a shard of polished bronze as a mirror. Just around the corner, a small crowd gathers outside a traveling apothecary's cart. Bottles of strange colors clink as the merchant waves his arms dramatically. lily root paste for fairness, mistletoe balm for spots, Saint Agnes, dew for the pure of heart and pore. You wonder how many of these tonics are genuine, and how many are just clever water and hope. In the crowd, a toothless woman is offering love spells in exchange for bread. Her amulet swings as she speaks. Charm yourself before you charm another, she warns. Later, in a cramped room above a tavern, you hear a woman humming as she combs her hair by firelight. Her brush has no handle and she sings off-key. Her face is reflected in the bottom of a pewter plate. It's not glamorous. It's not fashionable. But it's tender, private, soft, and you realize that counts too. Major historical fact: during the medieval period, many women used beet juice or red wine sediment to stain their lips and cheeks, a rudimentary form of cosmetics. Obscure tidbit: St. Agnes dew was an actual folk remedy made from morning dew collected on the feast day of St. Agnes, believed to enhance youthful appearance. Historians still debate whether medieval cosmetic rituals were seen as indulgent vanity or protective magic against a harsh, unpredictable world. You wake to a soft gray morning, the kind that never really becomes day, just shifts its weight from one cold shoulder to the other. The hearth has gone out, and your breath ghosts in the air as you sit up. Your blanket, once a prized possession, now smells of old smoke and damp straw. You stretch reluctantly into the chill. In the village square, a wooden tub is being filled with water from a well. A woman lowers the bucket with practiced rhythm. Up, down, up again, and you hear the creak of the rope and the splash below. Today is laundry day, which also means hair washing day. Not every week, certainly not every day. Hair washing is ceremonial in its rarity. There's ash soap involved and sometimes urine, if you're lucky enough to have old barrels fermenting behind your cottage. A girl is scrubbing her scalp with rough fingers, eyes closed in something like ecstasy or determination. She won't rinse for hours. The wind is biting, but she sings a little anyway, maybe just to prove she still can. In a nearby cottage, another woman warms a pot of elderflower tea while teasing her daughter's hair into a loose braid. Loose looks innocent, she says, half to herself. But too loose looks fast. The daughter rolls her eyes, but only once. There are unspoken rules about how much beauty is allowed and when, and who it's for. It's a lot like seasoning stew. Not too much, or you're suspected of hiding something foul underneath. Major historical fact: hair washing in medieval Europe was infrequent, often reserved for feast days or market days, and typically done with soap made of ash and animal fat. Obscure tidbit: stale urine, called chamber lye, was often used as a cleansing agent for both hair and laundry due to its ammonia content. Historians still debate whether the infrequent washing was a matter of custom, climate, or just plain lack of enthusiasm. It's evening again. The world has dimmed into a quiet hush, and the scent of cooked barley and wood smoke follows you into a new scene. This time, a manor house on the edge of some misty forest. You can hear the clatter of wooden platters, the rustle of gowns, and someone tuning a lute poorly but with commitment. Inside, you see her, the lady of the house. She's wearing a veil so sheer it seems to catch on the candlelight. Her forehead is plucked high, a trend born of noble ambition and questionable fashion, and her sleeves drape like theater curtains. She's powdered her face with ground chalk, dusted lightly across her cheeks like the ghost of wealth. A night compliments her pale bloom, and she nods graciously. Took 2 hours to get that ghostly bloom, but no one's counting, except the maid, who did all the work and now smells faintly of lavender and judgment. At the high table, beauty is a performance, carefully scripted, rarely spontaneous. The goblets sparkle, the spiced wine flows, and the conversations bend around compliments like vines climbing a trellis. But the lady, she's tired. Her bodice pinches. Her shoes are too narrow. Her smile is 3 parts habit, 1 part hope that no one notices the cracked skin on her hands. Downstairs, by the kitchens, another woman laughs as she lifts a pot. Her cheeks are flushed from the fire, her apron streaked with flour. She doesn't know she's beautiful. That's the best kind. Major historical fact: upper-class women in the late Middle Ages often followed beauty trends that included plucking the hairline to elongate the forehead, seen as a symbol of elegance. Obscure tidbit: ground alabaster, vinegar, and even lead were mixed into facial powders used to whiten the skin, despite obvious side effects. Historians still debate whether women truly admired these trends or simply endured them in silence under the weight of courtly expectations. You wake to the clink of pottery and the rustle of reeds. Your sleeping mat was never designed for comfort, just survival. The air smells of onions, stale bread, and dried herbs strung like garlands along the beam overhead. You rub your eyes, catch your breath, and remember the dream you had. Something about velvet gowns and mirrored halls. That was not your life, not even close. Today you're walking to the river, not to swim, certainly not to bathe, but to trade fish bones for beetroot and maybe hear some gossip about a wedding or a birth, or, if you're lucky, someone falling off a wagon of barley. You pass a girl squatting behind a bush, plucking her eyebrows with a pair of fish bones tied to a thread. Her friend holds a shard of metal as a mirror and mutters, "Too thin, and you'll look like a temptress. Too thick, and you'll look like a fool." A high-stakes game of follicular diplomacy. A little further, you spot an old woman rubbing a crushed garlic and goose fat paste into her knees. She offers you some for your skin. "Keeps the wrinkles away," she says with a wink. You're not sure it's working. Her face has the texture of a well-worn boot, but her smile is warm, and she smells like stew. You reach the market square, if it can be called that. A plank of wood holds jars of dried berries and clay pots of lard. A boy is trying to sell slugs as skincare. "For glow," he says. You blink at him. He doesn't blink back. A man nearby is brushing soot into his beard. "Darkens the jaw," he explains. "Makes a man look capable." You suppress a laugh. He's wearing sandals in snow. Major historical fact: medieval villagers often used natural, local ingredients as cosmetics and remedies. Animal fats, herbs, ash, and mud being common among them. Obscure tidbit: Slugs were occasionally used in folk remedies and skin treatments, either applied directly or steeped into salves. Historians still debate whether such practices were passed down through genuine belief, ritual tradition, or simply because there were no better options, and nothing else to do on a long winter night. Night falls early this time of year. You're inside a cottage lit by firelight and the occasional flicker from a tallow candle, watching shadows dance like lazy ghosts along the ceiling beams. You're here because someone invited you to a spinning circle, a small gathering where women come to work wool, tell stories, and quietly judge each other's needlework. A young girl, no older than 10, sits beside her mother, learning to card fleece. Her hands are clumsy, but determined. Her cheeks are flushed with firelight, her hair covered with a linen coif. She looks up and asks, "Mama, am I pretty?" The room stills for a breath. Her mother answers carefully, "You're strong, and clean, and clever." The room exhales. That was the right answer. Nearby, a woman recounts how her cousin tried using boiled nettles to make a face tonic. She looked like a tomato for 3 days. Everyone laughs, quietly, but with genuine joy. Someone drops a spindle. Another gently snores in the corner. A widow, wrapped in a shawl that smells of mint and mothballs, leans forward and says, "Back when I was young, we put powdered snail shells on our cheeks. It gave a glow just before marriage." She smiles, remembering. No one asks whether it worked. It's not about results. It's about the ritual. The wind whistles at the door. Someone throws another log onto the fire. You realize that for all their complaints, everyone here has made peace with their face. Mostly because there's no time to fight it. The sheep need tending. The children need soup. And beauty, if it comes, must be worn lightly, like ash on the hearth. Major historical fact. Spinning circles, or spinning bees, were common among medieval women, both social gatherings and essential economic activities. Obscure tidbit. Some medieval cosmetics included powdered snail shells for their shimmer and supposed cleansing properties. Historians still debate whether these gatherings functioned primarily as work events, gossip hubs, or quiet rebellions against the drudgery of peasant life. You wake to chickens arguing outside your window, which isn't really a window, just a wooden shutter that creaks louder than the rooster. Your breath forms tiny clouds in the cold morning air. Another day, another chance to impress exactly no one with your unruly hair and perpetually damp shoes. You're meant to help carry water today, so you wrap yourself in your thickest wool, the one that smells faintly of sheep and memories, and trudge toward the village well. The frost crunches under your feet. Your nose stings. The sun has not yet decided if it will participate. At the well, 2 women are discussing another girl's recent marriage. One leans in and whispers, "She's lovely, of course, even with those ears." You want to ask what's wrong with her ears, but you also want to stay warm. The conversation drifts into a game of which herbs improve complexion and whether smiling gives you wrinkles or makes men more likely to share apples. A man shuffles by, adjusting his hose, his actual hose, the legwear, and muttering about his new tunic being too tight. You overhear a debate nearby about whether a round face means someone is prosperous or lazy. The consensus is unclear. Everyone agrees, however, that freckles are either adorable or a divine punishment. You pass a cluster of girls peering into a frozen puddle, arguing over whose reflection looks noblest. One of them, barely 12, recites a prayer for clear skin. She ends it with a little twirl. That's the magic bit, apparently. Major historical fact: facial symmetry and pale, blemish-free skin were widely valued during the medieval period, though such standards were often unattainable for working-class peasants constantly exposed to sun, wind, and dirt. Obscure tidbit: some believed prayers and charms could influence physical appearance. There were even saints unofficially considered patrons of beauty. Historians still debate whether these beliefs were sincerely held, mildly superstitious, or simply small comforts in a life with few luxuries and even fewer mirrors. Later that afternoon, you're sweeping the hearth. Not for cleanliness, though soot builds quickly, but because today you've been told the bishop is visiting. And nothing makes you question your posture more than the sudden presence of a man who wears velvet gloves and owns multiple spoons. Everyone is fussing. The elder matron of the house has pulled out her best woolen robe, layered with a faded chemise that used to be cream but now resembles porridge. "He'll expect modesty," she says sternly, pinning a brooch to a neckline that dares to reach the collarbone. You are tasked with fixing the fire, stirring the stew, and adjusting the room's only tapestry so it hangs just slightly straighter, because apparently crooked tapestries suggest moral decay. When he finally arrives, the bishop smells faintly of incense, wax, and opinion. He praises the host's hospitality, critiques the salt level of the pottage, and then, in a moment of divine curiosity, asks if the daughters of the house are well kept. Everyone smiles too widely. One girl, flustered by the attention, blurts out, "I scrubbed my elbows with ash this morning." The bishop chuckles politely. Her mother looks horrified. You look at the fire, crackles in sympathy. Later, after he's left, the girls gather near the hearth and compare notes. "Was my braid too tight?" He stared at my sleeves. "Do bishops judge ankles?" One older woman, with no patience for any of it, mutters, "Beauty fades, but stew is eternal." She gets no argument. Major historical fact: clergy and visiting nobility often served as informal judges of morality, cleanliness, and even physical presentation, especially in households hoping to gain favor or status. Obscure tidbit: ash was used as an exfoliant or skin-brightening scrub among medieval peasants, mixed with vinegar, animal fat, or even beer. Historians still debate whether such visits were spiritual check-ins or thinly veiled social inspections. Some likely served both purposes at once. The sky is bruising into twilight. You step outside, wrapped in your coarsest cloak, the one that smells faintly of smoke and onions. So basically, like most things in your life, the village hum has quieted. Even the hens look ready to punch out for the day. You cross the muddy yard slowly, boots sinking slightly with each step. The air tastes like frozen bread. You pass by a thatcher reinforcing his cottage roof with straw and hope. His wife is inside, dabbing her cheeks with cold cream made from tallow and crushed chamomile, just in case the merchant from 2 villages over returns tomorrow. I heard his cart has actual oranges, she whispers earlier, like it's a royal secret. You glance up. Chimneys puff soft trails into the sky. One house has a candle in every window. Someone's courting, you're told. Or showing off. Probably both. Your feet carry you toward the edge of the village, past a sagging fence, and into a sloping meadow that holds frost like lace on faded linen. A group of girls sits in a circle there, weaving flower crowns out of dry twigs and stubborn winter herbs. Not for beauty, for fun, which surprisingly still exists in small doses here. One of them shows you how to tie a braid that frames your face like a soft helmet. You try it. You look vaguely like a startled saint. They clap anyway. As darkness settles in, a grandmotherly voice tells a story about a queen who bathed in goat's milk to stay youthful. She still died. The woman shrugs. But she looked expensive while doing it. Everyone laughs. You settle in close, cheeks numb, heart warm. Major historical fact. Bathing rituals were considered both spiritual and cosmetic in medieval Europe, but access to luxury ingredients like milk, herbs, and rosewater was rare and usually reserved for royalty or the wealthy. Obscure tidbit. Some women rubbed raw onion juice on their faces to tighten the skin. Others believed blowing into a cat's paw and rubbing it on their eyelids would make them more alluring. No comment. Historians still debate whether the extremes of beauty rituals were acts of desperation, confidence, or simply the medieval version of a spa day. The fire is almost out now, casting the last of its golden sighs across the stone floor. Your hands are warm from holding a wooden cup of broth, thick, earthy, and somehow comforting, even though you're fairly sure there's a turnip in it pretending to be meat. The air smells like ash, thyme, and the faint sweetness of old beeswax candles. Somewhere outside, a barn creaks. A soft wind stirs the loose straw on the floor. The day, with all its worries about sleeves, freckles, braids, and bishops, has finally exhaled. You lean against a beam and listen to it breathe. Someone hums a lullaby in the next room, off-key and beautiful in its own sleepy way. A girl wraps herself in an old wool blanket that once belonged to someone important. Or maybe it didn't. It doesn't matter now. The blanket is warm and that's enough. Above you, wooden rafters hold shadows. You imagine ancient spiderwebs spun like lace by tiny artisans who never once worried about cheekbones. The floor under you is uneven, but your body adjusts. The cold is still here, but you've made peace with it. Like everything else in this world, it stays just enough to remind you you're alive. You close your eyes. Somewhere a candle gutters out. The village sleeps. And you, quiet, ordinary you, have survived another medieval day. You did it. Somehow. With split ends, chapped hands, and all. Sleep well, wanderer. Tomorrow's another muddy miracle.